Hey Flosstube, my name is Lynn and this is my channel Those Missing Stitches where I talk all about cross stitch and a little bit about reading at the end of the video. Today is Wednesday, May 1st and this is my Flosstube number 17. Welcome to my channel and thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for everybody that watched and commented on my last video. It was my 1 year Flosstube anniversary or Flossiversary. I don't know the technical term if there is one, but I had a lot of wonderful well wishes and a lot of people stop by and leave comments. So thank you so much. I'm glad you're back. Or if you're new to joining us, thank you for joining us. Today I have a few things to go over. I do have some whips to share. I have plans. Today is May, so it's the official launch of Maynia. I have some plans for what I plan to do in Maynia. I have a mini haul, just a couple of patterns that I purchased during a sale. And then I am going to announce the giveaway winners. I did a special for my Floss Tube anniversary last video to give away 2 pieces of fabric. So I did pick 2 winners from that comment section, and I will announce them at the end of going through all my other whips and stuff. And then at the very end, if you're not interested in sticking around for the books, I'll give you a chance to sign off. But if you do stick around for the books, I have quite a few that I read in April and several to talk about. So I'm excited for you to join me if that is your cup of tea. So let's get started. So for April, I always start with my stats. So my April stats are I did work on 10 projects. I did a total of 17,879 stitches. I had 1 new start that was also a finish, but I cannot show it to you today because it is intended to be my small for the Smalls Exchange for StitchCon next month. I'm so excited it's coming up next month. This will be my first like full weekend retreat, not just a day. So I'm really excited for all the people that are coming and to just have a nice trip away from home, meet a bunch of like-minded people. So if you're going to StitchCon, please leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what weekend you're going to. Okay, so back to the stats. So I won't be able to show you that one, but I will take some pictures, and I'll definitely take some pictures with whoever picks it up in the exchange so you can see who got it. I did actually meet all my goals for this month, so super exciting. Okay, let's go through the whips. So I'm going to start with my whip go pieces, and then I'll go through the ones that I just have personal monthly goals on, and then everything else is kind of just at random. So for whip go, the 2 picks this month were Flowers Feed the first one was, I don't know if it's called Flowers Feed the Soul. It's what I call it, but I think it's technically called just Floral Sampler. It is, the artist is Happy Mood Point. They have a store on Etsy. I think it's called Daily Patterns Post. I'll link everything I talk about today down below. My goal, this is a full, I'm stitching this one on 25 count Lugana in Humorous Hyacinth, which is a color in my shop that's a light purple. Here's where I was the last time I showed this in a video. My goal for Whipco is if it's a full cross, which I am doing this one in 1/1 full cross, is to do 500 stitches. So I did mean that. I hit 505 stitches, and here's where I am now. I am stitching this one with I forget the number, PR, PR158, I think, Silks for You darker purple, and really love working with the silks. It's really nice. So that is Flowers Feed the Soul. That is Whipco number 1. I did meet it. Whipco goal number 2 was, or the second call was Night Circus Lovely number 7. This is, the artist is Jessica Jackson and it's charted by the Sewing Shop Inc. I am stitching this one on 25 count Easy Guide Lugana. I'm doing 3/110 stitch. It's the first one I did that I tried 3/110 stitch and really liked it. So I've started a few pieces since this one in that format. Here's where I was the last time I showed this in a video. I haven't picked it up in a couple months, so it's really nice to pick it back up. I've been working this one color completion, and I think I'm on 37.99, so kind of a gray. And I'm still working in that top corner. Again, this is 10 stitch, so my whip goal was to get 1,000 stitches, and I beat that. I worked on it for 2 days for 1,503 stitches, and here's where I got to. Really just working in the gray in this corner. Probably just did like a handful of rows, working in the gray across, all the way across to here and then down. So I think I only have about 3,000 or a little over 3,000 of this color. So I'm excited to get that one done. And I'm considering, I kind of want to work on her face a little bit and get her face done. I'm considering switching up from color completion to just maybe completing like the lips and the eyes or something kind of to bring some dimension to the picture. But we'll see. So that is Night Circus Lovely number 7. Still one of my favorites. Coming back in the rotation. Okay, so that was WIPGO, met both my goals. Next, I'm going to go over my monthly goals. And I have a monthly goal to work on the Grand Library. This is the Grand Library. It's a regular size max color version of the chart. The artist is Amy Stewart and is charted by Heaven and Earth Designs. My goal, I think, is 3650 stitches per month. Excuse me. Here's where I was the last time I showed this. I did end up deciding to switch sections. So now I moved up into a new section, into the second piece, or like if you're facing it, the right-hand side of the western section, and it kind of goes into the book part of the middle section with the fireplace. And it's easier to, because there are a couple of colors that have more stitches on it, it's easier to do my goal that way. And I am stitching this one on 18 count 2/1 full cross. Let me grab it, it's on the floor. I did complete an additional 4,494 stitches for 1.12%. And here's where I am now. You can see kind of the book, the spine of the book that creates the middle of that, or the outside of that fireplace section. Otherwise you can't really make out too much. Okay, in total on this one, and I actually just hit my 2-year anniversary of starting this one yesterday. I started it on April 30th, 2022. So in total now I'm at 194,021 stitches for 48.17%. So I'm super excited to have that much progress on it. It's definitely slowed down. My first year, I think I did like 35%, and I definitely am not doing that going forward. I have so many other WIPs at this point, but do have a goal to get to 55% by the end of this year, and that's what that monthly goal gets me to. And I surpassed that this month, which is probably good because next month I'm not sure I'll be able to meet it. So we'll see about that. Okay. Another monthly goal was one that I had started on March 24th as part of the 324 Stitch Along. The pattern is actually called 324 by Works by ABC, and the Stitch Along is hosted by Abby at Top Knot Stitcher, where I got the pattern from. And here's where I was the last time I showed it. My goal is to get essentially an average of a square a day. So depending on how many days there are in the month, that's how many squares I need to do, and I have surpassed that. I did end up purchasing from the Works by ABC Etsy shop the PDF so I could actually do stitch tracking, but I still have to use my working copy to keep track of the colors because the pattern is all just one symbol, and then there's a color key. So to keep track of the colors, I still use the physical pattern. Here's where I am now. I did a total of 2,286 stitches, which is an additional 15.5%. I love this one. It's so relaxing and so fun. It's a little difficult to pull the colors for sometimes, but otherwise, once I have the colors out, really goes fast and it's really fun. This one, I think I forgot to mention, I'm stitching on 25 count Silvery Moon Lugana, and I'm doing 1/1 full cross. Okay. My next monthly goal is on Saga. This is a pattern by Long Dog Samplers. I started it for Long Dog Leap Year Sal on Leap Day, and the goal is to finish it by the next Leap Day in 4 years. So to do that, I think I have to do around 2,200, 2,250, maybe around 2,300 stitches per month. And I did meet that this month. Here's where I was the last time I showed this in a video. I'm stitching this one on 20 count Lugana, my first time trying 20 count, and I do really like it. I am doing 2/1 full cross. This is on Sensitive Sylvie, which is a color that was in my shop. Just rotated out today, but it will be making a comeback. And here's where I'm at now. So this is Saga. I'm worked the next arch, and then I'm working in 2 colors, 930 and 931 in GMC. I did an additional 2,567 stitches for 2.4%. So I'll come in on that. Trying to alternate a little bit of the two colors to get a little differentiation within the arches, just a little bit in the arches, and then a little more within the arches or within the picture that's within the arches. It's a little hard to follow sometimes, whatever decision I make, and I end up frogging a lot, but I think it's worth it how it's coming out. Next, my final monthly goal is Tonight We Ride by Autumn Lane Stitchery. My goal is to finish this one by September so I can have it framed and up in the house by Halloween. I am stitching this one on 18 count Aida. It's called a color from my shop called Genuine Jillian. Again, not in my shop right now, but will be coming back. It's right before Halloween. Um, this one, I am stitching 2/1 full cross, and here's where I was the last time I showed this last month. I worked on it an additional 4 days this month for 1,744 stitches. And here's where I'm at now. Now I'm at 10 in total, 10,983 stitches for 73.55%. So I'm definitely on track for finishing this by September. A little hard to see. It's definitely a darker orange than what it's showing. But here's a close up. I love how the colors are coordinating. This looks way like more muted than the actual oranges. It's a really bright orange in person. Even darker than that. So more like a tangerine kind of color. So excited to get that one done. Getting really close. Okay, and then everything else is, or the next few are just kind of random things that I worked on that aren't necessarily goals, but I wanted to work on them. So next is Fruits of Plenty. This is a pattern by Modern Folk Embroidery. I am stitching this one on 25 count silver even Lugana, 1/1 full cross. Here's where I was the last time I showed this in the video. And I did work on this for an additional 3 days for 1,067 stitches. Here's where I'm at now. Working that section in the middle and a little more of the leaves around that middle section. I don't remember where I was last month, but I think I completed this too. And the light blue in here. So that one's coming along. In total, I am at 19,077 stitches for 40.25%. And Jacob just released a video this morning of some new releases that are of patterns that are in his shop, and I want several of them, but I realize like I need to slow my roll. I have a lot of whips already and a lot of plans for May, so we'll see. Some of those may be coming into my stash pretty soon. Okay, the next one is called Majestic Sunlight. The artist is Mariska Art, who's on Etsy. I'm sorry, Mariska Art, but I purchased the pattern from Stitches So Beautiful. I haven't seen it back in the shop in Stitches So Beautiful, but I'll link the shop itself. I'm just not sure if this pattern is available anymore. I am stitching this one on 25 count Easy Grid Lugana. Here's where I was the last time I showed this. I'm stitching this one 3/1 10 stitch as well. Just love the colors, especially in the spring. I really like the change of colors. Here's where I am now. Didn't do much. I only worked on it 1 day for 176 stitches. I'll go in a little bit. Getting a little more of that yellow and gold browns kind of around some of those circles. Love how you can really see the circles in there. Reminds me of more of like Impressionist art. Okay, and my last one to share is I did work a little bit on Winter Solstice. This is by Joan Elliott Designs. I'm working this one on 25 count Lugana in Sensitive Sylvie, which is a color in my shop, the same color I'm doing Saga on, but 25 count. And I'm working this 1/1 full cross with Silks for You PR070 black silk. Here's where I was the last time I showed this. And I worked on this an additional 2 days in April for 883 stitches. Here's where I am now. There you go. Finish that winter. And then a little bit in the section below it. I did end up ordering, it calls for a krennic, like a blue krennic for some stars and some little motifs in the middle to fill in some of this space. I did receive it, but I haven't stitched that part yet. I'm just sticking to the black for right now. Okay. So that is the last of my whips that I worked on in April. Okay, let's talk now about plans. For May, The Whipco calls were number 5, number 13, and number 19. Now, number 13 is kind of like a free space, like you would see on a bingo card. So that's why they picked 3 numbers this month, because number 13 is kind of like the extra. And number 13 for me is to kit up a new start, which is no problem because I have a lot of plans for new starts in May. And then for number 5, that is actually the Grand Library. So I have a 500 stitches goal on that one, hoping I can combine it with my monthly goal to get both and actually have over 4,000 stitches. But given my plans for Maynia and all the new starts I have planned, it's probably not going to happen. So we'll see. At least maybe I can get one goal. And then number 19 is No Time Like the Present by Modern Folk Embroidery. And my goal for that one is 500 stitches as well. Okay, for Maynia, I did decide to do what I did last year, and that is a new week, new start. So I will start on May 1st because it's a new week in May. So today I am starting a new start, and then every Monday that starts a new week after that, I'll start a new start as well. So my planned new starts for May, the one for today, I do plan to start Black Vintage Sampler. This is by Owl Forest Embroidery. I do have a piece of kind of random, it's not something that I have in my shop. It's just something I kind of played with and I couldn't recreate it if I wanted to, which is a bummer because I love it. I'm going to stitch it on this color blue, kind of a denim blue. Maybe a little gray, but very denim. Very reminds me very much of blue jeans. And then I'm going to use Silks for You PRO70. They're black. Okay, next. This one I had made up my mind. And then there are some new patterns released today, and I may have changed my mind. So my plan was to do Hummingbird Garden by Carolyn Manning, and it's the one from the Cross Stitch, Just Cross Stitch magazine. They're releasing it one row at a time in each issue. This is by Carolyn Manning, and I would plan to start this one as part of Manning May South. Then she released some new patterns today, and I may have changed my mind. So I'll talk about that a little later in some of my haul. Maybe you can help me make up my mind. The next one I plan to do is Welcome Halloween by the Drawn Thread. I have the physical pattern, so let me show you the picture. I did Trick or Treat by the Drawn Thread last year and finished it, and I stitched it on Vintage Country Mocha. So I may do the same thing, so I have kind of a pair that matches, and I might buy the same frame so I can just get like a matching pair. This is a little smaller. If I stitch this on 18 count, this Welcome is only 2 inches, so it's going to be really small. But that might work because Trick or Treat was a little bigger, so having them kind of offset from each other could look cool. Okay, then I plan to start Vintage Halloween Fair by the Witchy Stitcher. This, I believe, may have been an exclusive to her Patreon subscribers. I will, if it is, I'll just link to her store below, and if it's not and it's actually available in her store, I'll link the actual pattern. Now, the 5th one that I plan to start is a toss-up. I've been considering several. Um, some of the ones I've considered are like Deadly Aquarium Sal by Lola Crow. A lot of people have been starting this, and I love how it's coming out. I have a piece of fabric, and I'm mostly inspired by a color of a piece of fabric. So I don't know if I'm more excited about the fabric or more excited about the pattern. So I'm going to consider that one. This is probably going to be like my 5th week, so I have some time to figure out what I really want to start. There's also, I also want to start Halloween in Sita by Crochet Agogo, if I'm saying that right. I also want to start Pride and Prejudice Sampler by Lena Ova. I'd love to start Stephen King House by the Witchy Stitcher. I'm possibly also looking at, because Carolyn Manning released so many other patterns today, and I purchased some more patterns, and I have Hummingbird Garden, I may do a second Carolyn Manning for Manning May. So that leads me into my mini haul. I did purchase a couple patterns by Carolyn Manning in April. She had a sale going on in April, and it actually ended yesterday, but she started a new sale today, which is even better. That's 25% off, and I think it was to celebrate 25 years of designing. And then she released this whole series of new, she's calling May like the month of bouquets. So she's doing these bouquet patterns, and one of the ones she released today is Morning Blooms, and I loved it right away. So I may switch out Hummingbird Garden for this one and start this one next week, and maybe the 5th one, the 5th week, the 5th Monday or 4th Monday, 5th new start. Could be one of the other ones, or it could be one of these ones that I purchased in April. So what I purchased was tanzanite, and then I also purchased snow-touched pines and forest cottage. And now I want all of the bouquet series that she released today. So I'm glad there's a sale because if there wasn't, I would be in trouble. And I think she plans to release more. So I'm really in trouble if that's the case. Okay. If you have any feedback on what I should start or what your vote is for what my fifth start should be, please let me know because maybe I'll just take a vote and whoever wins or whichever one gets the most votes wins. Okay, now last piece related to cross stitching in the video is the giveaway winner. So for my last video, I did say that I would choose two different winners for a piece of fabric from my shop for its special Flosstube anniversary giveaway. And I did pick two winners. Thank you so much, everybody, for all your comments. There were so many awesome new starts planned. I looked up some of the patterns and I'm like, oh, I need that, I need that, I need that. But I held back. I did buy some of them, but I held back. So I'm so excited to see as people make progress and do their new starts. Thank you everyone who commented and who uh, gave me all the well wishes for the Flosstube anniversary, and thanks for all this last year of watching. So the two winners that were picked were Gail Maltese 7277 and then C Fitzgerald 174. If you can each email me at thosemissingstitches@gmail.com with your requested fabric color and your type and your mailing address, I will get that piece of fabric out in the mail to you in the next couple weeks. I believe you're possibly, based on the names, you're possibly already customers of mine. So if you can just confirm, yes, this was my um, Etsy username and your address, then I can actually mail it to you directly from the Etsy address that's already confirmed. Okay, so that's the end of my cross stitch section. Congratulations to the winners. Please reach out to me. I am going to talk about books next, so if that's not your cup of tea, thank you for joining me again. And go ahead and sign off at this point, and I will see you next time. Okay, if you are sticking around for the books, let's talk books. Okay, I did read 12 books in April. There are a few new releases from authors that I make sure to read like everything that they release. So I'm excited to talk about those. And I'm gonna try, because there's so many books, I'm gonna try to categorize them a little bit by genre and not talk too much. I get a little more, I think I'm gonna talk a little more about the women's fiction because there's more to talk about. But some of them I'm kind of grouping together. So in more of the mystery section, I did read The Teacher by Frida McFadden. There is a surprise ending again, as Frida McFadden also, does in almost all of her books actually all of her books that I've read. And again, I didn't see it coming. So it's always a nice surprise when it's something I can't figure out. It's a completely unrealistic premise, but it was good, fast-paced mystery that I wouldn't have guessed. Actually, a couple of the twists and went, huh, oh, that's cool. Definitely not my favorite by this author, but it was worth finishing. It was a good one. Okay, I've read several romances too. The first one was The Worst Best Man by Lucy Score. Lucy Score does a lot of like spicy love stories, very common for her, and this was no exception. And again, pretty common premise as well, with the best man and the maid of honor having kind of a love-hate relationship and then hooking up, and feelings are growing over time. Similar to the last book, not my favorite by Lucy Score, but it was a quick read and it was definitely okay. Okay, the next two books I read were part of a series that I'd read the first book in March. So these were Eyes Turn Skyward and Beyond What Is Given by Rebecca Yarros. They are book 2 and 3 of the series of Flight and Glory, which I read last month, which was the story of um, the military family and the daughter that loses the dad and the guy that comes along that kind of helps her deal with her grief. So these are the stories of his roommate and military buddies, two roommates and military buddies, so one roommate each book. Um, the first one is Jagger, and then the girl's name is Paisley, who's essentially General's daughter, and she has an illness that she wants to kind of ignore just to feel normal. and have fun with this guy. So kind of sad about the illness and what she's dealing with, but good characters, I think, in that one. And then the third book is a story of Grayson and Samantha. And Samantha is also a secondary character from the first book. She's the roommate of the original female lead in the first book. And so there's lots of ties to the different characters and backstories, but they definitely can be read independently if you're interested in one over the other. But I would say the first one is probably still my favorite of the series. But I did like continuing. I do like series when I like some of the characters. I like continuing the stories of some of those secondary characters and just giving them a nice happy ending. So both were good. Um, not the first one was still my favorite, but I think what's interesting is the fourth book is actually returning to the characters in the first book, and I really don't want to read it because I don't want to continue that story. I want to leave it where it was. I may skip to the fifth book, which is another secondary character from some of the other books. So we'll see. Okay, next is another series, a different series. This is When It Falls Apart, and then the second book was Be Your Everything, and these are by Catherine Bybee. And I have to say, I read When It Falls Apart on a recommendation, or actually, I listened to the audiobook on a recommendation from Everhand, and I decided to listen to it on a whim, and I was not disappointed. I didn't read anything about it. I just knew I'd read this author before, or I knew I'd heard of this author before, so I thought I'd give it a try. It is a love story, but unlike other romances, the catalyst of the story is not like betrayal or heartbreak. It's an outside force that is like in conflict with the main couple, but the main couple is united and communicates and is on the same page and is strong. And they did have a moment in When It Falls Apart where they were first getting together and they did have some hurt feelings, but guess what? They talked about it and they established their communication and they established that in order for this relationship to work, trust is essential. And they respected that. So it was refreshing to read something with grown adults communicating well and having a healthy relationship. The first book is a story of a woman that's fresh off a breakup, and her dad is very ill, and she moves to a different state into an apartment to be closer to her dad. And the apartment is above this Italian restaurant. It's a family owned restaurant. And the son of the family is a chef there, and he also lives in the building with his daughter. And they start dating and they get along and love each other and work well together. It's completely strange, I know. The second book is the story of the sister of the chef and the daughter of the family, who also works at the restaurant, and her childhood sweetheart, and they drunkenly, and they call it accidentally, get married in Vegas in a drunken kind of stupor. And of course, their relationship was a little more challenging and learning how to communicate with each other as a couple rather than as just friends, more so than the first book. But they do decide to give it a shot and try out the marriage because they do really love each other and have had crushes on each other for a really long time. Just never, timing never really worked out. And again, Catalyst is an outside force, not them actually fighting with each other. So again, refreshing, really, really refreshing just to read something that's not about breaking each other's hearts. Okay. The next one I read is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. It was a new release for this month, and I think I get notifications on authors I read frequently of like their pre-releases. So I did pre-order this one. And when it came out, um, I started reading it right away. Abby Jimenez does have a really good way of writing some really complex characters with histories and traumas and personality quirks that are more realistic and relatable to real life. So this is a love story, but there's a backstory of personal trauma to a little bit kind of both of the main characters and how they can interfere with the relationship. There is a trigger warning about, like at the beginning of the book, for anyone that has dealt with parental abandonment or a parent's mental health issues. So if that's something that's triggering for you, it may be something you don't want to look at. It is a very, very sad piece to read with the familial relationships for both the main characters, but it also makes it kind of more real and more relatable because we all have our own hurt and we all have our own histories and sadness. And there are some ties to, she does this as well. She ties the characters to some of her other books, and in this particular one of the ties was really far fetched, but it didn't ruin it for me. I still enjoyed it, and I do really enjoy her writing style, and I really enjoy the complexities of her characters more than anything else. So this one was worth it if you're a fan of Abby Jimenez. Next one is also a new release. It's called Funny Story by Emily Henry. I love Emily Henry, one of my favorites. I read everything that she releases. I did pre-purchase this one as well, and it did not disappoint. The premise is that Daphne is a female character, and she's dumped just before her wedding, and 3 years into her relationship, her fiance leaves her for his best friend, his female best friend that he grew up with, that he's suddenly decided he has feelings for and wants to explore it. She was also in a long-term relationship and living with somebody. Now this guy that she was living with, um, needs help making rent. Daphne needs a place to stay because she can't stay at her house anymore. So they decide to move in together, and they're kind of in their sorrow, suffering together from the loss of their relationships. This one is really, really, really funny. Like, I found myself laughing out loud several times. I really liked the dialogue between the two main characters and some of their quirkiness and some of their quips at each other. It was really funny, and I could see getting along with people like that really well just based on how funny they were. Um, I love those characters, not just the main characters, but I actually did like some of the secondary characters, like the new friend that, the work friend that Daphne has, and then also Miles, who's the male character. I loved his sister as well. They're all very just quippy and funny and people I would get along with in real life and laughed out loud. So if you do like um, kind of funny romances, this is definitely one I would recommend. So that's it for the romances. Now I'm more into the women's fiction. The next one is it's called This Place of Wonder by Barbara O'Neill. I've read a couple of her books. This one, I do like her writing style. This one was good as well. There's a kind of famous chef that dies, and we hear the stories of the women in his life. So the ex-wife, who's also his business partner, the girlfriend that he had at the time that he passed away, that's a lot younger and is living in his house and really has nowhere to go once he passes away and they want him out of his house. And then the daughter, who is actually in a substance abuse treatment facility at the time that her dad passes. So it's really about them dealing with their grief and how to move on in life. And you get a little bit of the history while you get a little bit of the present. There's great, strong, distinct female characters as they navigate through all this. Um, their different experiences and how they move on with business and how they move on with life. Um, so really, and how they, you know, in some cases come together and repair their relationships, either with each other or with other people in their life. So it was a good one. Then I read The Light Through the Leaves by Glendy Vandera. Not sure if I'm saying that right. This one also had different perspectives. It's two different perspectives, incredibly sad. So there's a mom who is distraught. We start out the book immediately with a mom who's distraught over catching her husband cheating. She takes her 2 4-year-old twin boys and her newborn 2-year-old, 2 month old daughter to just the creek. She wants to be out in nature when she catches her husband cheating. The boys get a little chaotic at the time that it's time to leave, and in her kind of haze and trying to deal with the boys and wrangle everything together, she forgets the baby's car seat in the parking lot with the baby in it. So she realizes it pretty quickly and she turns around, and by the time she gets back, the baby is gone. So she ultimately cannot deal with her grief and her guilt, and she leaves the rest of the family to essentially be a nomad for a while and just try to escape. Um, the second perspective that we get after she decides to leave and be a nomad, which is almost a year after the just like the kidnapping, essentially, we start to hear the perspective of a girl, which you assume is the girl has been kidnapped. Now she's, I think, 7. Um, excuse me, and she's raised by a woman who keeps her in complete isolation. She, this woman obviously has some mental issues and really shelters the girl to only her way of thought and only her way of being. And the girl eventually is able, like, it takes some convincing and some, she's really afraid of her in some ways, but still loves her as well. But she finally is able to convince her to let her go to school and be around kids that are her own age. And this is where she finally starts to learn there's different perspectives and there's different people and there's different ways of life. She still is very focused on her mom's way of teaching her, which is very hippie-ish, kind of one with nature. And she talks about like your dad was a raven and the earth brought me to you, and just really really sheltered and actually mentally and emotionally abusive. But it's the only mother the girl has known, and she really does love her, but she doesn't know any different. I really like the story and how it progressed with loss and healing and ultimately forgiveness, especially of oneself. This one was a good one. I would recommend this one. But it is heartbreaking, especially when you realize some of the stuff that the kidnapper mom is doing to the young girl. Next is The Speed of Light by Alyssa Grossell Dickey. This one was an intense read. You get two different timelines. It's one character, but two different timelines. So one is the present day, and one is the last year leading up to the present day. It was definitely too close to reality for me. The present day, the main character, Simone, works at a university campus, and there's an active shooter situation in an office. I work at a university campus, so this was like very emotional for me to think about what if this happened to me at work. So definitely a little too close to home and very intense. But I do have to say the chapters alternated between and very, very short for the present, and then you would go into a longer chapter for the past leading up to this. So you do kind of get a break from that intensity, and it's needed because it is very intense. Um, and you get some of that character development as you get like the calmer kind of past leading up to now. So the past development is that Simone had been diagnosed with MS, and she's trying to cope with her diagnosis and living with the disease while she's starting a new relationship and working and finding the right doctors and her own kind of emotional dealing with this illness and how she's going to live life. So I do have very close family experience with MS as well. So it was really, really, kind of close to home in multiple ways. And I think I found it fairly realistic in that case. And just really, really, really sad that it was realistic and that we have to deal with you know, active shooters in that sort of situation. Like we do have to go through training and do that. And the fact that we have to do an active shooter training at all is unfortunate to me and just devastating. So it was a good book. And I think it sits with me more because it was so like I could see myself in this situation. Or I could see, the family member that I did have that had MS in this situation. And did she go through that? When she was diagnosed. So really close to home on this one, and I think that's why it resonated with me so much. Next one, my favorite, favorite, favorite of the month. It's called The Outlaw Noble Salt by Amy Harmon. Amy is brilliant as always. She's one of my favorite authors ever, and I actually have two pieces of fabric colors that I've named from characters in her books. I've read all of her books. Some of them I've read multiple times, and I have to say this one left me with like a hangover. I missed it, and I wanted more of it almost as soon as I finished it. And oddly, when I started it, I didn't think I would like it. The first few chapters in, I was like, well, I hope the story isn't continuing like this. So it's a fictionalized story about Butch Cassidy, and a good portion of the beginning of the book is really about the actual history of Butch Cassidy. So that's what I was hoping like wouldn't continue as just the actual historical part. It's interesting, but I just didn't want it to be the whole book and wasn't like her normal style of writing. So um, that's not what the rest of the book is about. That's only a portion of the book. So ultimately, um, it's the story, a fictionalized story of Butch Cassidy and what would happen in a situation like this. He meets a woman who's a famous soprano in Paris and her younger son. And when the lady's husband dies, she needs an escort across the Atlantic Ocean so she can go to America to do her tour in America. And she asks Butch, she knows who he is, but he's going by a pseudonym, to be her bodyguard on the trip. And she pays him and asks him to accompany them to protect them overseas. So his disguise or his pseudonym while he's traveling is Noble Salt. So that's where the Noble Salt comes from. And he needs to still hide because he is still wanted for all of the crimes in America and for there's rewards out for him. So he doesn't want to be turned in. So once they get to New York, they meet up with the Sundance Kid and Butch's brother, and there are some issues, like some history of the woman that kind of come back to haunt her and why she needed a bodyguard to begin with when she gets to New York. And some issues happen um, that are the catalyst of the story. But ultimately, what's interesting is that it's kind of a story of what if Butch Cassidy really was trying to make good in the end? Or what if there's a version of him that was truly misunderstood and tried to make better or tried to help somebody? And it reminded me a lot of kind of the Disney trend recently of the misunderstood villains, and like maybe their story is a little different than what we actually thought. Of course, totally fictionalized, but she even has in the book that Butch Cassidy's character himself says multiple times, "I'm not a good man. I'm a bad man," and tries to tell them to stay away from him. But I think deep down the idea is maybe he wasn't so bad. And maybe if he did want to turn his life around, would there have been an opportunity for him? So it's an interesting premise, but just in general, I just love the story. Highly, highly recommend this one. Recommend anything Amy Harmon, but this one did really. I think I'll probably read it again. I did really love this one. So The Outlaw Noble Salt, if you like um, historical fiction. So that is it for my reading. Thank you for sticking around if you've stuck around for this portion of it and joining me. If you have any book recommendations, I'd love to hear what other people are reading and what their favorites are. Um, Please leave me a comment below. I'm curious. I'm always interested in picking up other books and seeing how they go, and I love finding new authors. So please leave your recommendations if you have anything. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.